You know that song you can't get out of your head? Well, believe it or not, its secret history goes back, way back, like 600 years back. The DNA of your favorite track, whether it's pop, rock, or hip-hop, can actually be traced to the Renaissance. So today, we're going to uncover how the distant past literally built your playlist.
I mean, have you ever really thought about that? Why do certain notes and chords just work together? Why do we write music down the way we do?
Well, the answers aren't in some modern recording studio. Nope. They're hiding in the cathedrals and royal courts of Old World Europe. All right, let's get into it.
So, first up, a musical rebirth. The word Renaissance literally means rebirth. And that's exactly what it was. All across Europe, people got completely obsessed with the art and ideas from ancient Greece and Rome. This sparked this massive explosion of creativity in art, in science, and, you guessed it, in music.
We're talking about a solid 200-year stretch, basically from 1400 to 1600. And this wasn't just a quiet period, it was buzzing with change. Composers started traveling all over, moving between different cities and courts, sharing their styles. It was kind of like the first international music scene.
Now, here's a key idea you gotta know to understand this music. It's a word called polyphony. It just means many voices. See, before this, most music was pretty simple, with just one single melody. But Renaissance composers started doing something wild. They began weaving multiple, totally separate melodies together, all at the same time.
The easiest way to get your head around this, just picture a band where everyone is the lead singer. The guitarist has their awesome melody, the bassist has their own catchy line, the vocalist is doing their thing, but somehow, when you hear it all at once, it just clicks. It creates this one rich, complex, and totally beautiful sound. That right there, that's the magic of polyphony.
So how do these amazing new sounds spread? Well, that brings us to our next section, technology that changed everything. Because one single invention completely flipped the script on how music was shared. You could almost call it the original music sharing platform.
Okay, picture this. Before the mid-1400s, if you wanted a copy of a piece of music, someone had to write it out, by hand. It took forever, it cost a fortune, and there were mistakes all the time. But then, Gutenberg's printing press comes along. And once they figured out how to print music with it, whoa, game changer. Suddenly, sheet music was cheap, it was accurate, and you could make tons of it. A composer's hit song could spread across the entire continent. And for the first time, regular people could actually buy music to play at home.
So with all this music spreading like wildfire, it started to split into two different worlds, really. You had the really serious, grand music that was made for the church, and then you had the fun, popular stuff for everyday people. Two worlds and two very, very different sounds. Yeah, it all came down to purpose. On one hand, you have sacred music. This was all for the church, and it was designed to sound absolutely heavenly. The main event was the Mass, and it was often sung a cappella, which just means with voices only, no instruments, to get this really pure, epic sound. But then, on the other hand, you had secular music. This was the party music, the entertainment. The most popular type was called the madrigal, which was basically a song a few friends would sing together, usually about normal stuff like love or nature.
And the composers of these madrigals got super clever. They loved using this cool trick called word painting. So check this out. If the lyrics talked about sighing, the melody might have a little downward droop. If the words said running up the hill, the musical notes would literally climb up the scale really fast. It was like a musical inside joke, and it made the song so much more fun. But of course, it wasn't all about singing. People were playing all kinds of instruments. So let's take a quick look at what you might call the Renaissance orchestra. So a group of musicians playing together back then was called a consort. And you had two kinds. A whole consort was when all the instruments were from the same family, like a bunch of different-sized recorders playing together. That gave you a really smooth, blended sound. But a broken consort was when you mixed it all up, maybe a lute with a flute, to get more interesting textures and colors.
And the instruments themselves were really cool. The lute was pretty much the acoustic guitar of its time, super popular. You had recorders, of course. For something really loud at outdoor festivals, you'd hear a shawm. Early versions of the violin and cello started showing up too. And if you played keyboards, you'd be on a harpsichord, which is kind of a forerunner to the piano.
You know, a huge reason for all these instruments was dancing. Dancing was a massive deal back then, a huge part of social life. So composers wrote tons of music with a really strong, clear beat that you could dance to. You'd have slow, graceful dances like the pavan, and then you'd have fast, jumpy stuff like the gallia to really get your heart rate up.
Okay, so this all brings us to the big finish, the legacy of the Renaissance. We've seen what they were doing back then, but the real question is, why should you care? Why does any of this still matter?
Well, here's why. This period laid the foundation for literally the next 400 plus years of music. The basic rules of harmony, the very chords that make your favorite song work, they were figured out back then. The system we use to write music down, perfected. The ancestors of the guitar and the violin, they showed up. And this was the time that gave us the whole idea of a composer as a famous artist. It's all right there.
So the next time you pop in your earbuds, listen a little closer. Can you hear more than one melody weaving around each other? Is there an instrument that sounds a bit like a lute or an early violin? Because whether you realize it or not, there's a little piece of the Renaissance hiding in almost every playlist out there. The only question is, what can you hear in yours?